Yo, what's happening people? I'm Era from eratheproducer.com and welcome back to the channel. In this video I'm going to be showing you some tips and tricks for building more complex chord progressions and melodies. So if you're new to the channel, then do me a favour and hit that subscribe button and turn the post notifications on too so you'll never miss out on an upload. Now with all that said, let's make some chords.
Era on the track.
Now chords are often the backbone for most beats, so being able to make interesting and unique chord progressions is very important. So for a lot of beginners and even intermediate producers, chord progressions can be a very daunting topic, and some of the terminology used can make them seem a lot more complicated than they actually are. In this day and age, we're very lucky because most DAWs have a feature that allows you to highlight a specific scale to work in. I'm working in FL Studio, and to highlight scales in this DAW, you first want to come into the piano roll. From here, you just want to click this arrow in the top left corner and then hover over view. That will bring up this second menu, and then you just want to hover over scale highlighting. Inside this menu, you can then select a root note, which is going to be the key that you're working in, and in this second menu on the right hand side, you can select a specific scale. For this video, I've got my root note set to D and I'm working in the natural minor scale. So once you've selected your scale, you'll then see all of the notes that fit into this scale will be highlighted with this lighter grey colour. Before I get into making a chord progression, I'm just going to go over some terminology to make the rest of the video easier to understand. The first thing I'm going to go over is different chord types, as I'll probably be referring to these a lot throughout the video. A triad is a chord that consists of 3 notes, and this will contain a root note, which is just the bottom note in your chord. Then to complete this chord and make a triad, we just need to stack a 3rd interval and a 5th interval. Simply put, an interval is just a distance between 2 notes, and this is usually relative to the root note. So in this case, D is my root note, so I'm going to refer to that as 1. The next note in the scale is E, so we're going to skip this and go to the 3rd note in the scale, which is F. And then as you guessed, we're going to skip the 4th note in the scale, which in this case is G, and then we're going to place down the A to get our 5th. So now that you understand what a triad is, I'm going to go over 7th chords and 9th chords. These types of chords are used a lot in genres like jazz, soul, R&B, and even lo-fi. So we already know that we have a root note, and then we've layered this with the 3rd and the 5th. So to make a 7th chord, you just want to skip the 6th note in the scale and then place down the 7th. And the exact same thing applies if you want to make a 9th chord, so you just want to skip the 8th note in the scale and then place the 9th note. So they're all the chord types I'm going to be referring to in this video, and now I'm going to quickly go over inversions. Inversions are a way that you can take these triad, 7th or 9th chords and just make them sound a bit more interesting. For this example, I'm going to take away the 9th and I'm just going to have a 7th chord. So you'll see that the second note up in this D minor 7th chord is an F. This F can be moved either up an octave or down an octave, and it's still going to be a D minor 7th chord, just with a different voicing. In my opinion, this is the best way to make your chord progression sound more unique and interesting. And once you start using 7th and 9th chords alongside inversions, you can get some really complex sounding chords. So now that I've got all the terminology out the way, I'm going to put it all into practice by building a chord progression from scratch. I'm going to stay in the D minor scale, and to start off with, I just want to find some root notes that sound good together. So these root notes sound good to me, and now I just want to go ahead and start building these out into 7th chords. Like I said earlier, to do this you just want to start from your root note, place the 3rd interval, the 5th interval, and then lastly the 7th interval. If the whole interval thing confuses you, then just remember you want to start from your root note, skip a note in the scale and place the next one, skip the next note and place the next one, and skip the next note and place the next one. So now I'm just going to go ahead and build the rest of these root notes into 7th chords. And now that I've done that, I've got a pretty flat sounding chord progression that sounds like this. To make these chords sound a bit more interesting, the first thing I'm going to do is play around with the rhythm. Having your chords hit on every downbeat can sound good, however I prefer to move them around a little bit and just add some rhythm to the chord progression. So I think the first thing I'm going to do is take this first chord and drag it back a little bit so this chord can play for a bit longer. Next I'm going to take this last chord and shift it over by the same amount so then this third chord can also play for longer. And now these boring chords have a bit more rhythm to them, making the chord progression sound a little more interesting. Next I'm going to change the voicing of some of these chords by using inversions. So the first thing that I'm going to do is take all of these root notes and copy them down by 1 octave to make a nice low end bass line. I think this could even go down by another octave, so I'm just going to shift them down again. The next thing I'm going to do is take the second note from every chord and shift them up by an octave, and this is going to help make the chord progression sound a bit more thick and add some extra colour to it. So what I'm actually going to do is take this whole chord progression and copy it across, and then I'm only going to have the inversions on the second half. Now I'm just going to go through the chords and see if there's any extra notes that I can add to help create a more suspenseful sound. I find that an easy way to do this is to use neighbouring notes or notes that are right next to each other in the scale. So for an example, in my second chord I have an F as the root note, and then 1 octave up from this I have an E. So I'm just going to place this F and see how that sounds. So to me that sounds good, and now I'm going to move on to the next chord where I have an A, and then above this I have a G, so again I'm going to place the A right above it. I'll then just repeat this for the last chord, which contains an A sharp, so I'm going to come up 1 octave and place the A sharp here too. So here's how the chord progression sounds without those extra notes. And here's how it sounds with the extra notes added in. And from here you now have a solid base to build the rest of your track from. Having an interesting chord progression is going to help you with inspiration when it comes to other elements like adding counter melodies and bass lines. So the last thing that I want to do to this chord progression is add a nice top line to turn it into a full melody. So that is going to bring us to the end of today's video. Hopefully after watching this you'll have a better understanding of chord types and inversions and how to use them to make more complex sounding chord progressions. If you enjoyed the video or if you learned anything new from it, then make sure to hit the thumbs up button before you leave, and if you're new to the channel then do me a favour and hit that subscribe button. Big shout out to the Patreon gang for suggesting this video, and if you'd like to have a say on what type of content gets uploaded to my channel, then check out my Patreon using the link in the description. Big up anybody that made it all the way to the end of the video. I've been Era, thanks again for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.